Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share my first slide now, and we should be seeing my first slide on our screen. A review of chemical safety. A review of chemical safety. If you can see my screen, you can indicate by saying so. Okay. Can we see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
I can see it.
All right. So what we're going to be doing in this first presentation is just to refresh our minds on some of the things we already know about chemical safety. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to give us this icebreaker, 2 short stories really, to set the tone for the discussions that we're going to be having in the next 3 days, both on chemical safety and chemical security. Now, the first one was somebody in the domestic setting who bought kerosene, but used a bottle of Sprite, the colorless, transparent bottle of Sprite, to buy his kerosene, and kept it in a place where he thought it was hidden. And then a child discovered or saw it where it was hidden and opened it and drank it mistakenly. That's the first one. Now, the second one was a story that I think happened either in 2020. It went viral. I don't know how many of us can remember. A private school in Lagos. And there was this new student, a girl, who was admitted into the school, and she started leading her class. The girl who had been leading the class in the past got very jealous, about it, and decided to do something. And what did she do? She came with bleach from home. And while nobody was looking, not knowing that another girl saw her, she went to the place where they keep their water bottles and poured some of the bleach in the water bottle of the girl who was now coming first, who she felt was threatening her. Now, that girl didn't see her do it, but another girl saw her. And when this girl was going to drink her water, that other girl ran up to her and said, "Don't drink it. I saw somebody adding something to it. Don't drink it." Investigations done, and it was discovered that this other girl added bleach, to her water. It went viral at that time. They tried to hide the identity of the school and all. But why am I relating these 2 stories? The first one was an accident, while the second one was intentional. The father who put kerosene in a Sprite bottle didn't mean any harm. So the child who went to picked it up by accident. The second one, that girl intentionally wanted to harm the other girl. So that's chemical safety and chemical security for you. When there is no intent to cause harm, when it is an accident, it's a safety issue. In other words, the father would have kept the thing more secured in a place where that child would not have access to it. Or perhaps better still, not use a transparent bottle. Then in the other case, the child meant to cause harm. And one of the things, or some of the things we'll be discussing during this workshop is, how do we prevent unauthorized access to things that can cause harm, especially things that have dual purposes? Bleach is meant to be used domestically for a good purpose, but in the wrong hands, it can be used, to kill another person. So you are welcome once again to this workshop. All right, so the outline is going to be as follows. We'll be looking at what chemical safety is by way of introduction, then chemical hazard awareness, safety data sheets, the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals, the chemical compatibility, chemical handling and storage, safety control measures, PPEs, housekeeping and hygiene, emergency procedure and response, and under that we have your own personal emergency, co-worker emergency, then laboratory/site emergency. How do you react in the event of a spill? What are the safety equipment? And then we'll have the conclusion. So we go on now to the first slide, to the one on our introduction. Chemicals. Can I take this away? Chemicals are part of our modern and everyday life, and every one of us, even this morning, have used chemical one way or the other. We have it in our cosmetics, detergents, medications, and all that. That's on the domestic level. Then industrially, we also have textiles, agriculture, telecoms, pharmaceuticals. All these sectors and more use chemicals one way or the other. Chemicals bring benefits to us, modern day society, make a huge contribution to our socioeconomic well-being and people in terms of commerce and employment. There are people whose job is to produce the chemicals, there are those who sell them, and of course there are those who use them. Now the exact number of chemicals we have in the market is not known. Every year new chemicals are being added into the market. As modern day society cannot do without the use of chemicals, it is therefore imperative that chemicals must be used and handled in ways that are safe, you don't harm yourself, and at the same time, you don't jeopardize or you don't endanger the environment. All right, I know this. So let's move on to our definitions. What is chemical safety? Is a practice of using occupational/laboratory chemicals in a manner that ensures the safety and health of humans and prevents damage to the environment. That's one definition. Another definition is the practice of handling chemicals in a safe manner, minimizing hazard to the public and your personal health. Third definition, chemical safety is the application of the best practices for handling chemicals and chemistry processes. One, to minimize risk, whether to a person, a facility, or a community. And it involves understanding the physical, chemical, and toxicological hazards of the chemicals you are dealing with. Now, chemical safety covers all aspects of chemical use, including the manufacture, the transuse, and then the ultimate disposal when you are done with the chemical. What are the objectives of safety? The first is that we want to minimize risk, protect yourself who is using the chemicals, protect others, protect and preserve the environment. So what is a hazard? That is anything that has potential to cause harm. Or damage. So you have something that is low risk, moderate risk, or high risk. Risk is a combination of the likelihood of an unwanted incident occurring, the severity of the consequences occurring when exposed to the hazard. So there is a system, a globally harmonized system for classification and labeling of chemicals, that's GHS. And under it, we have what we call safety data sheets, how to label chemical compatibility, and that's what we'll be looking at next. So what's a safety data sheet? It's a document that provides useful information on all chemicals, the hazards associated with them. It gives information on how to handle it, how to store it, and emergency measures in the event of an accident. So the globally harmonized system mandates that all SDS, that safety data sheets, for all chemicals should have 16 sections, and the systems are listed. What's the name of the chemical? What's the hazard? What is the composition of that chemical? What are the things you can do for first aid in the case of any event? Measures, accidental release measures, how do you handle and store? How do you manage exposure control and protection for yourself? What are its physical and chemical properties? How stable is it? What are the toxicological issues, regulatory, and any other information? And if we look things about this written on them, but beyond this, there is a safety data sheet that must capture all the 16 aspects of safety as it relates to that chemical. Labels, on the other hand, must have the following: name of the chemical, physical health and environmental hazard statements, precautionary statements, first aid instructions, pictograms that show the hazard associated with that chemical, and then the name of the supplier. So what is a pictogram? And we'll be showing some very very quickly. An image or label that includes a warning symbol. Sometimes specific colors are used to provide information about the danger it may cause or the damage. And then we'll have the CLP, classification, labeling, and packaging hazard pictograms, similar to those used in the old labeling. So there's an old labeling system, and then there's a new labeling system. Then we may find out that on a particular chemical, you may have more than one pictogram, meaning that there are more than one issues as far as using that chemical is concerned. Let's move on to the next slide now. We can see some examples here of hazard pictograms. The first one is explosive, and the symbol is a bomb, an exploding bomb. Then for flammable, we have the symbol of fire. For oxidizing, flame over a circle. Corrosive, we can see the sign there. Acute toxicity has the skull and crossbones. Then hazard to the environment has dead tree and fish. So once we see this page now, that cross sign used to be used in the past, but it has not been replaced. So I know that some of us will still have old chemicals in our stores that are still carrying this extra, but the new pictogram is an exclamation mark, which shows health hazard, hazardous to the ozone layer. And then we have serious health hazard, and then the last one for gas under pressure. So chemical compatibility, what does it mean? Two things are compatible if when they stay together, there's no risk to safety and all that. And then they are incompatible when you bring them together, and then it could lead to safety concerns. For example, we have the nitric acid reacts explosively with organic solvents like ethanol and acetone. And when these reactions gives as particular hazards, the two of them are said to be incompatible. This may not be a very good example, but something we're very familiar with. In basic chemistry, we're told, don't add water to acid, add acid to water. So, well, it's not that they are not really compatible, the way you will mix them together, and in a way it becomes incompatible because there's going to be an explosion. So chemical incompatibility charts are available in print and online. And it's expected that before you carry out any experiments using chemicals, you need to check to be sure that they are compatible one with another so that you don't endanger yourself and others. How do we store? How do we handle and store? Now, the concept of incompatibility plays an important role in how you store your chemicals. One's first inclination may be that store chemicals alphabetically or by experiment. But in chemistry, you don't go that way. It's not by A's and B's and all that, because 2A chemicals may not be compatible. And if you put them together, you may have problems at the end of the day. So this presents a potentially hazardous situation if containers can leak or break and then the chemicals mix together. So storage systems should segregate categories of chemical based on compatibility. And then also for managing waste, it's also important that when you are dealing with waste, you must put compatibility of the chemicals into place, lest you dispose two incompatible chemicals together and you may have hazardous reactions occurring or explosions. So what are the measures we should take for safety? First is know your surroundings, exit showers, eye washes, fire extinguishers, blankets, phone numbers. Build good work habits. And we have these good work habits here. No eating, no drinking, no smoking, no headphones, no applying of cosmetics in the lab, no mouth pipetting. Don't work alone in the lab, and make sure you use your PPE. Now, I'll say something about safety control measures. Many of us here are lecturers working with students. So what do we have about air and apparel for the laboratory? Clothing worn in the lab should offer your skin basic protection from splashes and spills. So lab for the ladies is not where you do spaghetti, you know, and all that. Your skin should be well covered, okay? Then short mini skirts, short gowns, and shirts that expose your midriff, things that expose the stomach, are also not necessary for a lab, because in the event of a spill, you will be exposing your skin directly. Some of us will say, but the person is expected to wear lab coats. True as that may be, but it passes through the lab coat and lands directly on your skin. So it is always prudent to minimize the amount of skin exposed to the laboratory environment. Bulky and loose-fitting clothing is not appropriate in the lab. Lab is not for boo-boos. Lab is not for baggies. Lab is not for big shirts, because you could just be moving and a part of your clothing will hook a chemical. You have gone ahead, it pulls it down, and then you have a problem at the end of the day. Shoes should cover your toes. So labs are not for open toes. to prevent feet from spills and drops. They should offer stability. And then whatever it is that you are wearing to the lab, is expected that we'll have our safety shoes. But in a case, especially student laboratories where safety shoes may not be provided for all students, your shoes should be comfortable enough for you to work. So again, I talk to the ladies, high heels are not what you should wear in a chemical laboratory. Then hair should be long. Hair should be tight and entangled for risk of fire with lead Bunsen burners. I know ladies these days put a lot of stuff on their hair, but if you're going to work in the lab, you need to tie it up because you could just bend to take a reading and then your hair it gets entangled into something, your hair drags something down, and before you know it, you are in an accident. Reactive chemicals, lab coach work correctly. A glove, not a glove. Therefore, just enough that you are wearing a glove. There's a chart on that shortly. Safety shoes, respirators. Then inspect for damage and ensure it is clean and hygienic. Make short glove. The glove is meant to protect your hand. So you need to inspect it ahead of time to be sure that there is no damage. Then a caution there is that don't depend solely on your tube because it is often the final barrier between you and exposure. So you must take your measures as well. Materials after now. Different, like the kind of glove you wear, and it will not protect you with some kind of chemicals that you may be dealing with. So Jane, car bottles after dispensing, put away chemicals after use, keep chemicals prepared, should be well labeled, glassware should be washed immediately after use, cylinders should be restrained, return all equipment and chemicals to their designated location at the end of the day. Do not store chemical containers on the floors. Do not use floor stairways always. So let's look at emergency response. Okay. What do you do in the case of an emergency? 4 things. The first is that you should anticipate that an emergency can occur. Then when it does, recognize it, evaluate, then control it. So as I'm applying this, for instance, anticipate that a fire may occur. And because you anticipate that, you make fire extinguishers available, people are trained to use it, and then post each room with emergency phone numbers. Locate safety showers, eye washes, and teach employees to use them. Centrally locate spill, clean up kits. Clean up a spill only if you know what to do and you have the appropriate equipment and are trained. So your own personal emergency now, in case of you need a response. This type of training focuses on a chemical incident, accident, or emergency that involves you directly. Corrosive chemical spills onto clothes, penetrates your boots and gloves. So you need instructions on how to use first aid equipment, safety showers, and eye wash facilities. Then for a co-worker, you are not the one involved now. Somebody working with you has an emergency. Now responding to that, where another worker has been injured, it could be in the work area on the site, using emergency equipment and all that. You need to contact a first aider, and you need to be, the person needs to be trained on how to manage that. Then site emergency has to do with the location where you work. And what do you do in the case of this? It's expected that you would have been taught how to manage drills and what to do in the case of that. So they may need to use emergency PPE like breathing apparatus, and then shut down all operating plants, and when that happens. How do you deal with chemical spills? It depends on the magnitude. It's not every kind of spill that you can claim. If it's a minor one, 1 liter, you can handle it only if you have been trained to do so, so that you don't. But if it's of a bigger magnitude, experts may need to be called in, to be able to do that. Okay, then how do you respond? Below are some guidelines to handle a spill. Decontaminate any victim at the nearest safety shower or eye wash. Notify appropriate personnel immediately. Limit or restrict access to the area. Wear PPE that is appropriate to the degree of hazard. Depending on the chemical or associated hazard, use a spill kit to clean up for toxic chemicals, don't attempt to clean up the spill. And as I said, I remember an incident when I was a child. A thermometer got broken. We were children, we didn't know what it was. We saw the mercury bulbs on the ground. It looked very attractive. And we went picking them, very excited about it. I'm sure you know how toxic chemical mercury is. Thank God we didn't eat it because it looked very attractive, very shining and glossy. But I think it was just divine intervention that we didn't eat it. So it's not every kind of chemical that you can try to clean. If it is toxic, then you need to be trained to do it. Complete an incident report and submit to the appropriate office. All right, these are the safety equipment we should have in our lab. I'll run through that: eye wash unit, safety shower, fire extinguisher. Now, the important thing about all this is that, one is that they are available, two is that they are functional. We all remember the Sosoliso crash issue. There was no water to use for the firefighters. So it's not just being there, they must be functional. And that means that from time to time, we owe it a responsibility to ensure that these things are working. And then finally, I put an acronym here for safety, RAMP, R-A-M-P, ramp up for safety. This is an acronym that is easy to remember and is a key to creating a safety culture in experimental work using chemicals. So what does R stand for? Recognize the hazards involved in any chemical you are dealing with before you start. Number two, assess the risk of the hazards. Number three, minimize the risk as much as possible. And then finally, prepare for emergencies. Don't say it cannot happen to me. Those that it happened to didn't think it will happen to them. So it's always better, to prepare for emergencies. And on that note, I want to thank us very much for listening to this first presentation. A poll is going to come up now to assess how well we paid attention while the presentation was going on. So when the poll comes up on your screen, just pick your answers and then you submit. Thank you very much. So we're waiting for the answers now. First question says, chemical safety covers all aspects of chemical use, including manufacture, transport, use, and disposal of chemicals. Is this true or false? Please click your answer or you are not sure. Let's click on our answers now. Nobody has clicked yet. Let's click on our answers. I'm yet to see any response from here. Can we see the poll questions? Okay, all right. Only one person has voted. Can the others just put up their answers? Only one person. Just click what you think the answer is. Is it true? Is it false?
Correct.
You are not
but
sure.
it's not, the submit is not going through.
Okay. All right. No, it's after you have put answers to the two questions before you
The number
now.
2 is not having option.
Number 3 doesn't have options. Minimizing
Number
risk
2.
is the only number 2.
The
Really?
options are not
It
coming
does.
up.
It does. Just scroll up. You will see the answers.
down.
Minimizing risk is the only key objective of chemical safety. True, false, true and false. So pick your answers. Only 11 people have voted. We are quite a number on the call. We are about 44.
Please, can the question come up again? I closed my.
I
I have submitted.
Okay, some people are
I have
answered all the
submitted.
questions and submitted.
Okay, no problem if you have submitted. Okay, we want to end the poll now. So those who have not yet submitted,
Please, can the poll come up again?
do so. Huh? It's a
Ma'am, please,
network
can it come up
issue.
again?
It's a network issue. It has to do with your net. Right? Somebody is clicking not
No.
sure.
I accidentally closed my, so that I can on my sound. So I need it to come back on, or I don't know where to check.
I don't know. All right. Okay. I think we have 22 people that have voted for true for question 1, and then for question 2. Some people picked true, some people picked false, almost in equal proportions. Can we end the poll now, even though I expected more responses? I want to end the poll now. All right, so once we click end, we'll see the results, okay, on the screen, so you can show. All right, so let's see how we fared. All right, so for chemical safety, question number 1, chemical safety covers all aspects of chemical use, including manufacture, transport, use, and disposal. 26 out of 27 that voted said it is true, and that's a correct answer. Nobody picked false. One person picked not sure, and I think that's the person who mistakenly clicked on the wrong button. And then for number 2, we have minimizing risk is the only key objective of chemical safety. And 14 out of 27, that's 52%, said it is true. 37% said it's false. I don't know how somebody can pick true and false at the same time. So somebody, 3 people out of 27 picking true and false. It can't be true and false at the same time, okay? And I think the answer to this question is false, because it's not only about risk. There are other things you need to do. So that's not the only objective of chemical safety. So when sharing now, and okay, does somebody have a question? There are other questions. Says a useful document that provides information on chemicals, describing the hazards associated with them and giving information on handling, storage, and emergency measures in the event of an accident is called what? We have 5 options: safety policy sheets, we have 15%, inventory sheets 2%, sorry, 7%, data sheets 4%, safety data sheets 63%. Then, how can somebody say it's all of the above? Is the person listening at all? The answer definitely can be all of the above, but I think a greater percentage of us got the answer correctly. SDS, that's what we called it. And SDS stands for Safety Data Sheet. Then our last question, the acronym for safety. All right, recognize hazards, accept the risk, optimize, options. Okay, it's not to accept the risk, so A cannot be correct. You assess, not accept. So option B, the correct answer. Recognize hazard, assess the risk, minimize the hazards, and prepare for emergencies. 70% of us had the correct. And for those who didn't, either well, maybe because of internet issues, but I want to, it shows that listening what the presentation was going on. Thank you very much.